Boris fans, Robin here, and I'm back again today with a parent's guide for you. And today, the parent's guide to Marvel Champions. I had hoped this would be a regular series, but it's a little bit irregular. But with Christmas coming, I thought it would be a really good opportunity to talk about Marvel Champions and why your children and your family might enjoy playing it. What this game is a really fun way of playing a Marvel superhero with your family. You can sit down, you can all take on a hero and take on a villain and just have some sort of comic book based fun. The artwork is amazing, evocative comic book. It's a tradition. I think they're all basically modern comic book pictures, but the artwork is great, and you really do feel like you're in a Marvel story when you're playing, which is a really clever feat of design. You may not be familiar with this type of game. It's quite a specialist game, but do check it out if your kids are into Marvel. It's really worth looking at. I'm going to explain why now. So what is it? Well, it's a card-based game for 1 to 4 players, and it's obviously based on the Marvel franchise. Ooh. Yes, so in this game you will play the aspect of heroes. So you can play, from the core set, you can play Spider-Man, you can play Iron Man, you can play Black Panther, you can play Captain Marvel, or you can play She-Hulk. And you can play 1 to 4, so that's a really key point. That's the first key point about this game, is you can play it with your family amongst yourselves, or your child can go off and play it on their own, which for me is a really key aspect to it, because they can play on their own or amongst themselves, and hopefully quite happily. So if you haven't got time to play with them, they can still play even if they're on their own, or if only one of them likes it. And it's a cooperative game as well. So what does that mean? Well, for those of you who aren't used to specialist games, cooperative game is kind of exactly as it sounds. You're all working together to defeat a common enemy. In this case, it's a Marvel villain, and you're all Marvel superheroes, and you're all working together, you're not competing against one another, which is quite nice too. You get less aggro. It doesn't matter quite so much if one of your children is older than the other and tends to win all the games, because you're working together. At the end of the day, everybody's in control of their own hero, and they get to say what's going to happen, and so you don't end up with a situation where, I've got 3 children of different ages, and one of them can't sort of pulverise the other one into the ground every game, because they're just better and a bit more adept at thinking things through. It is a strategic based game. You do need to think a little bit ahead. I think it's probably suitable for 10, 11 upwards, probably maybe a little bit younger if you're helping out. If they're playing on their own, they probably need to be a little bit older. There's a reasonable amount of reading to do on the cards, and a little bit of planning and thought as you go through the game in order to succeed. Let's have a quick look in the box then. What do you get? Well, you get a couple of rule books, and you're going to learn to play guide. Now this is really good. This will take you through how to play this type of game, and how to play the Fantasy Flight Games. People make lots of games around the same kind of mechanics as this game. This is a fairly entry level one, as you might expect with being Marvel and aimed at a more sort of family oriented game, and you get to learn to read, and these are really good. They basically take through the basics of how to play the game, and by the time you've gone through it, you will know pretty much everything you need to know about how to play this. And then there is a rules reference guide as well, but there's not actually any more advanced rules as such. They just clarify some of the stuff that you've learnt in here, and then if you need to look it up when you're playing, you can look it up in this one, and it's really good. This document lives online as well, so things do change a little bit, and I'll talk about the evolution of the game towards the end of the video, but as the game has evolved, new rules have come into it, and they're kept online. You can look it up in PDF form, and sometimes the people who design the game, they tweak the mechanics so it changes. So that's the kind of difference. I haven't really talked about that yet. This is a more of a specialist game. You won't find this in your average toy shop, but frankly, the games in your average toy shop are, they're okay, but we're talking about Monopoly and Cluedo. If that's your background in this, you won't have experienced this sort of game. Monopoly and Cluedo, those kind of things, the rule set is fixed, has been fixed for years. I know Monopoly have done a few different versions of it, but essentially it's fixed. Everybody knows where they're at with games like Scrabble and stuff like that. But a lot of the games, new games that are sort of mainstream, aren't really all that good. But these games have hours and hours of design work in them, and they evolve, and the designers change them. So that's something to be aware of. This game is a living game. It is actually called a living card game, and I will talk about what that means towards the end of the video, as I said. So it's not, the rules aren't set in stone. That's something to be aware of. But everything you need to know for this box is in here. Some tokens. You get loads of tokens. These all push out. That's a really good fun thing to do. And then on the back of there's some dials. So they basically make the wound counter dials for your heroes and villains. I'll flash up a photo of what they look like, but they're very simple. They look fab, and you basically just dial around and put up the number of wounds and things that your hero or villain have scored. You get several decks of cellophane wrapped cards, and you get one for Captain Marvel and one for Spider-Man, and you get one for Rhino. So Rhino is the first villain you will play against, and he explains how to do that in the Learn to Play rules. And you can choose, if you're just playing on your own, you can choose whether to play Spider-Man or Captain Marvel. There's two of you play both. It doesn't recommend you start with 3 or 4 players, just start with 2 of you playing with Spider-Man and Captain Marvel. And this has everything you need to play a game, your first game. The way the game works, and I don't want to get too in-depth into the mechanics of the game, is that one of you each takes a hero, and then in a given game you play a villain, and then you will draw cards based on your hero and play them against the villain. And the villain has a deck, and you draw. When it's the villain's turn, you do it. Nobody else controls the villain. You play the villain as well, but you're kind of competing against the villain. So you will draw cards to the villain, and certain things will happen, and then you kind of react to them on your turn with your hero. So Spider-Man will take his turn, then Captain Marvel will take her turn, and then Rhino will have a go, and each time different things will happen. You'll be dealing damage to Rhino, Rhino will be dealing damage back to you, and you've got to try and knock down Rhino's damage down to 0 before he knocks yours down. On top of that, like all good comic book, film, and the actual comic books, the villain is up to no good. They've got some sort of horrible plan to subjugate the universe. And so that's their scheme, and each villain is working towards their scheme, so you have to try to stop that scheme coming to fruition. And there's different mechanics in the game to make that work, and different heroes have different abilities to do just to stop that going on. So and some of them are better than others. Like I say, there are 5 heroes in the book, and some of them are better at fighting the villain, some of them are better at stopping the villain. That's what they call scheming, to get it to, he's trying to bring his evil plot. If you don't bring the evil plot if you don't defeat the villain before he brings his evil plot to fruition, then you lose the game. And that's pretty much it. The only other thing I might talk about is, and it's a really nice little mechanic in the game, when you play Captain Marvel, you also, your card, you have a card, I'll flash it up for you. You have a card, it has Carol Danvers on one side and it has Captain Marvel on the other, and during the game you flick between one to the other, because when you're out fighting the villain you have to be Carol Danvers or Spider-Man or Iron Man or Black Panther or whatever. You have to be that person. That's the only way you can easily do damage to the villain. But like in the films, like in the comic books, all the artwork in these cards is based on the comic books, not the films, by the way. They don't do damage. When Peter Parker's at home with Aunt May, he isn't doing damage to the villains. But he can go home and rest and find out what's going on. Have a rest, recuperate, be just a normal person when he's Peter Parker, and you can flip between the two, and you can do different things when you're one to when you're the other. But while you're not being the hero, the villain is more likely to scheme, but he can't scheme while you are the hero, because he is trying to stop you from hurting him, but he can hurt you at the same time. So you can't be injured, you can't be damaged while you're in your alter ego form. Effectively, you're hiding. But when you're out fighting the villain, that's when you can be killed. So there's an interesting interplay in the game, which is kind of what it's all about, between trying to stop the villain from doing what he wants to do, but also trying not to be killed by the villain. And it's really very clever. There are 3 villains in the box. There's Rhino, who's the starter villain. There's Claw, and there's Ultron. And they get progressively more difficult as you fight them. These extra cards are the other villain cards and some extra hero cards that are in the box. each time you play, when you play a new villain, it tells you which cards to make into a new deck. So this is the Rhino deck that you start with, but as you get more, as you play more difficult villains, you introduce some of these cards into this starter deck, or you change them around. So you get a different deck when you're playing against the villain, and it gets more difficult, more challenging cards in it. But everything tells you how to do that. So you never have to worry about what you're doing. It tells you which cards. The cards are all very clearly labelled, and it tells you which cards to put into the deck to play against a particular villain. And similarly, when you start, you tells you which cards to play for which hero. And there are different aspects of the cards, but we'll come on to that in a second. Now, what I did mention at the beginning, of course, this is a living card game. Now, you may be thinking, if you're not used to this type of game, what the hell is a living card game? Which is kind of fair enough, because it's a bit of a nebulous term. So what is a living card game? Well, you may notice if you look at this box that there's quite a lot of space in it. I mean, you have got to put the counters back in and stuff, but they're not going to take up much space in that box. But what is a living card game? Well, there are a number of things you could describe a living card game. You may have experienced a collectible card game in the form of Pokemon, which is not too dissimilar to the old football stickers that I had when I was growing up, where you buy blind packets of cards and you get new Pokemon each time you buy it, and they have rare cards, and they have ultra rare cards, they have shiny cards, they have common cards, and your kids, if they've been into Pokemon at any point in time, you'll know how frustrating it is. They want a particular one, and you go in and you buy a little foil packet, and they don't have the one in it, so you've got to buy another one, and they get very expensive very quickly. This is a living card game, which is subtly different. Fantasy Flight still make packs of cards on a regular basis for these. So I don't know how many there are. There's probably 3 or 4 releases a year, and they release a pack. But they release. I meant to bring one down and I've forgotten. But they have a Captain America pack. There's a Hulk pack. So you can buy new heroes, and that has the new cards to play in them. Every single one of those packs has the same set of cards in it. They have little QR codes on the back. You can scan which cards are in the pack. It's always the same. You can check it out online, which cards are in there. It's always the same. It's not like Pokemon. It's not like football stickers. It's not like Lego minifigure packs. You know what you're going to get when you open it every time. So that's a really nice thing about this mechanic. If you're going to buy Hulk, you're going to get all the Hulk cards you need. You're not going to have to go around searching for them. There are completists in the hobby who buy everything, but you don't have to. If your son or daughter wants to play Captain America or Miss Marvel and just that, you just buy that one pack. You get everything you need to play in there, plus a little bit more, which I'll come on to in a second. But every time you buy a hero, you effectively get a Captain Marvel style deck for whichever hero you've just bought. Similarly, there's villains. There are new villains, so there are 3 villains in this box, and they will keep you occupied for quite some time, because there are various modes you can play, getting harder and harder and harder. They will keep you occupied for quite some time, but perhaps you particularly like the Green Goblin. You can buy the Green Goblin pack and play the Green Goblin. At the moment, I think there's Green Goblin, the Wrecking Crew, and the Immortal Kang, I think, are the 3 villains available off the top of my head. There might be more, and more coming out all the time. As I said, there is this release. They do have this release schedule, and so then you can play a new villain. It brings in new challenges and new mechanics, and actually it's a really good fun way to evolve your game. There is also another box set called Rise of the Red Skull, which implements a kind of campaign style thing. You don't really need to know about this for this introductory video, but that has various new villains in it and a couple of new heroes. It has a Hawkeye and Spider-Woman. That's a little bit more expensive and a little bit hard to get hold of at the moment. So I did say there are everything you need to play plus a little bit more. What is that little bit more? Well, this is also a deck building game, so it's a living card game, which I've kind of explained. So basically, the living card game means the game is evolving each time new heroes come out, new cards are entering into the card pool. So that's why it's called a living card game, because it's getting bigger and bigger and growing. You also get, as well as the cards as well as this basic deck that you get to play, you get extra cards, and that's where the deck building element comes in. So when you're building your deck, you choose your hero, and if there's 4 of you, you need 4 decks, so your 4 of you will each pick a hero. But let's just say there's 1 or 2 of you, you'll both pick a hero, and then you'll both, so like, I'm going to pick Spider-Man, you're going to pick Captain Marvel. We could use the pre-generated decks, or we could make our own, in which case we have to take Captain Marvel, and we have to take all the Captain Marvel cards. You have to have all of those. There's a set number of those, and you have to have those. So that's your starting point. And then you have to pick what's called an aspect, and the aspects are justice, aggression, leadership, and protection, and they basically kind of modify how you're likely to play. So if you're playing leadership, you lead lots of allies, you put lots of allies out to help you, cards with allies on, and they have different abilities. But if you play aggression, it tends to be much more in your face, and you do lots of damage dealing cards, so you can deal lots of damage directly. So in the ally cards, they have different skills which can help you either stop the scheme coming to fruition, and it's kind of a bit more subtle, but the aggression card is a bit more blunt, so sort of bang, 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 I'm going to keep doing damage. And the protection and justice cards have add different flavours too. So that's one choice you have to make. It's not important right now, but that is a choice you have to make. So you could choose cards from that, and there are a few cards as well in the game that are completely aspect free, and you can include whoever those. You can only choose one aspect card. You can't choose your best aggression cards and your best protection cards. That's an all or nothing deal. You pick, each deck has to be between 40 and 50 cards, and that's it. And you don't have to do that though. As I said, they've got all these generated cards, pre-generated decks, and the game works without those very well. I think as you get harder into harder and harder and harder into the more difficult villains, you might want to, because you can set up powerful combos with how you're thinking about it, and that's where it's really great for your children, because they can go away. They've got the time. You haven't got the time to sit down and build decks and work out what the strongest combination is. But if they get into this game, they totally have, and they can sit for hours with cards. They can look at the online card database, or they can just with their own cards that they've got, and they can work out little combinations of things that they can do to bring justice to the universe. And that's a really nice aspect of the game. So it's called deck building, and it's fun. But each time you buy a new add-on to your game, you get extra cards which you can then swap out. So you'll get some new leadership cards, some new protection cards, some new basic cards. You won't get any new hero cards apart from the hero that's in the deck, but you will get different things, and then you can try different things out on the table. And then so your children can make decks and bring them to you. Say, try this one, and we can play. You can play 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 of you, and you can play against a villain. And it will play and play and play. And like I say, they can play on their own. So if you're like me, you've just got one child who's interested in this game, they can take it away and go and play on their own and just really enjoy playing, being a Marvel superhero, and enjoy defeating whatever villain they've got. And then they can come back and say, I've built this really great deck, do you want to try it out? And we can try a couple of decks out together and have a game. But I haven't got time to do all that deck building stuff, but they have, which is a really nice thing about the game. So I think in a nutshell, that is it. There's not much else to say, except to say, if you have any questions, I hope I've explained it. I tend to think I'm going to explain it very clearly and then end up gabbling away, but hopefully I've kind of given you the core idea of what Marvel Champions is. It's a really nice game for the family. It's clean, good, clean family fun. Sounds silly, but it's very comic book. It taps into that magical comic book feeling that children and adults really enjoy. The online community is really great. There's a couple of really good Facebook pages out there. If you just search for Marvel Champions card game, you'll find it. And there's a really great blog called Hall of Heroes, has loads of really good stuff about the game, and there's loads of other content out there as well. One thing I should say, the community is really fervent. There are people who love this game and they want to play it, they want to get the new stuff all the time. There's some new things coming. Ant-Man and the Wasp have just come out. There's Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch are coming in the beginning of the year, and then it's a bit later in the year next year. There's a Guardians of the Galaxy set which everybody's very excited about. But this is a really strong community, really loves it. It can be difficult to get hold of stuff when it first comes out, because people want to play it immediately and people pre-order it months in advance, and due to COVID supply issues, sometimes not enough sets come into the country, or this country certainly, but I think across the world not enough sets are made available for the amount of people who want them, and so the die-hard fans tend to get in there first. So that is a little bit of management expectation. If you do have children, you have to bear in mind, if they really, really want to play Scarlet Witch for some reason, or they really want the Guardians of the Galaxy box set, unless you've pre-ordered it, and even then, if you have pre-ordered it, you may not get it straight away. So you may have to manage their expectations and say, well, it will come back. This stuff does come round. It just can be a bit slow, and I think obviously with the pandemic situation, that really hasn't helped. Fantasy Flight games often have supply issues, and you will get the stuff eventually. It will come back into stock, and you will be able to pick it up. But because it's so popular, it can be hard to get straight away. I find that a little bit frustrating, because I do want to pick stuff up when it comes. But pre-order, you normally have to pay for it months in advance. I don't want to have to do that. But I mean, if I wait till it actually comes to the shop, you struggle to get a copy. But if you're patient, then you will get one day. And there's so much content here, and if you're only just getting into it, there's so much for you to catch up on. It shouldn't be an issue. It's just if your child particularly wants one thing when it comes out, you just need to bear in mind that may not be that easy. But that seems to be the modern way of doing things. Drives my nearly 50-year-old self bonkers, that this kind of false scarcity type stuff. I'm not saying it's false, because I think it is just supply issues, and obviously Fantasy Flight would love to sell as many sets as they possibly could. So that's kind of it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. Do comment below if you've got any questions. Do follow us on Agents of Sigmar and chuck us questions over there about any number of things to do with board gaming. We'd love to talk about it over there. So do follow us, Agents of Sigmar. So like and subscribe to the video, Agents of Sigmar on Facebook. Do come and say hello. We'd love to speak to you. Pete and I are both parents, and we have children who love to play games sometimes, and hate to play games other times. And we're happy to talk about what our board game experiences, and just let us know what you want to know. So hopefully that was helpful, and I'll see you soon. Bye!